Unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries and was later pronounced deceased.
She was only 21, a young woman full of energy and plans for her future. One moment, she was walking out her workplace after another late-night shift, and the next, she was gone.
Heartbreaking development in the search for 23-year-old Kada Scott. After more than 2 weeks of searching, police say a very specific anonymous tip led detectives back to this abandoned elementary school where they uncovered a shallow grave in the woods with remains that they believe to be those of Kada Scott. Now, the medical examiner, of course, is working to confirm the identity, and investigators are in touch with Scott's family. Now, keep in mind, this is the same location where officers say they found her debit card and phone case last week.
No witnesses, no warning, just silence. Within days, her name was on every local news station. Her picture shared across social media with the words "missing" and "please help us find her." But no one knew then that she was already gone, that the same car seen waiting outside her workplace that night would later become the scene of her final moments. Before we continue, if you're new here, don't just scroll past. Stories like Kada's deserve to be heard, and we make sure they're never forgotten. So hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon, because here on The Silent Witness, we speak for those who can't. Now, let's talk about who Kada Scott was. Friends describe her as kind, hardworking, and always smiling. She worked as a caregiver at the terrace at Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia, a job she took seriously because she loved helping people. Kada had dreams like any young woman her age, to grow in her career, support her family, and eventually build something of her own. She was close to her mother and often shared everything with her. That's why when she suddenly stopped answering her phone, her family immediately knew something was wrong. It was October 4th, 2024. Kada had just started her overnight shift. She parked her silver Nissan, greeted her co-workers, and went about her usual duties. Nothing seemed unusual until around 10 p.m. when a co-worker reported seeing her step outside to take a call. Moments later, she was gone. Her car remained in the parking lot, keys and bag inside, but Kada had vanished into the night. At first, no one wanted to think the worst. Maybe she'd gone to meet a friend. Maybe something came up. But when she didn't show up for work the next day and didn't answer her mother's calls, panic set in. The next 48 hours would change everything.
If you have any information, small, large, minuscule, please reach out to the Philadelphia Police Department and let them know. That may be the piece that they're looking for. We all miss her. We want her home.
Police were called. Flyers were printed, and social media was flooded with her photo. People across Philadelphia began asking, where's Kada Scott? Investigators quickly learned that Kada had been in contact with someone named Keon King, a 21-year-old man from the area. The two had known each other before, though no one knew exactly how close they were. What caught detectives' attention were the text messages between them. Earlier that day, King had messaged Kada saying, "Yo, Kada, this my new number." Later, she responded with a message that would haunt investigators. "Kidnap me again." He replied, "Better be up too." It sounded playful until the reality of what followed came to light. Those were the last messages Kada ever sent. Around 10:09 p.m., she received another message from King telling her to call him when she was outside. Minutes later, her phone went dark. From that moment on, she was never seen alive again. Hours turned into days, and the search for Kada grew desperate. Her family canvassed neighborhoods, knocked on doors, and pleaded for help online. Flyers covered light poles and store windows, while volunteers searched wooded areas and abandoned buildings. Everyone hoped she would walk back through the door, but deep down, something felt different. The police called it a missing person investigation, but her mother called it a nightmare. During those early days, detectives began retracing Kada's steps. Surveillance footage from the care home parking lot revealed a dark-colored vehicle circling the area not long before she disappeared. It was identified as belonging to Keon King. When investigators questioned him, he admitted knowing Kada but claimed he hadn't seen her that night. Still, his story didn't line up with what the evidence suggested. His phone records showed he was in the same area at the exact time Kada went missing, and that alone was enough to raise red flags. Then came the first major breakthrough. A week into the investigation, authorities located King's vehicle, a black Honda sedan, abandoned and reeking of bleach. Forensic testing later revealed blood traces inside the car matching Kada's DNA. The discovery changed everything. This was no longer just a missing person case. It had turned into a homicide investigation. Viewers, imagine this. A young woman's life in the inside a car, her body hidden while her loved ones beg for answers. It's the kind of thing that makes you question who people really are when no one's watching. Police believe King had lured Kada out of her workplace under false pretenses, possibly pretending they were just meeting up to talk. But something went horribly wrong. Investigators suspect that whatever happened inside that car ended with Kada's death. 2 weeks later, the search came to a heartbreaking end. Officers found human remains in a wooded area near an abandoned school in Germantown. The site was isolated and overgrown, almost as if someone had chosen it knowing few would ever go there. The body was partially buried, but items found nearby, a piece of jewelry, a phone case, and strands of hair, pointed unmistakably to Kada. Forensic testing later confirmed her identity, and the medical examiner ruled her death a homicide caused by a gunshot wound to the head.
It has been confirmed that these are the human remains of Kada Scott, and that has been confirmed by DNA. I believe that's also been reported. There was some erroneous reporting that it was quick DNA. It was actually not quick DNA. It was the regular DNA.
When police broke the news to her family, their world shattered. Her mother could barely speak. Friends who had been posting daily updates online now filled timelines with tributes. The entire Philadelphia community mourned her loss. Candlelight vigils were held, and her name became a symbol for the countless young women who disappear every year. But there was still one question hanging in the air. Why? What led to this? King's history started coming to light. Records revealed that he'd been accused before of harassment and stalking, though never convicted. Witnesses began telling police that he'd been obsessed with Kada, following her, messaging her constantly, and refusing to accept boundaries.
He did have a previous case. It was a 2025 case for very similar conduct, strangulation and kidnapping. That case had been withdrawn by our office based on the witness failing to appear at court. I pulled that file, and after an extensive review of it, our office made the decision to refile those charges.
Karen, call the cops.
The relationship, whatever it was, seemed to have spiraled into something dangerous, and eventually deadly. As the investigation deepened, more disturbing details began to surface. Detectives traced phone records that showed repeated calls from King to Kada in the days leading up to her disappearance. Some were late at night, others during her work hours, as if he was constantly monitoring her movements. People close to Kada said she had recently started expressing fear. She told a friend she felt someone was watching her, and even mentioned that King had shown up at her workplace uninvited before. Those moments, once dismissed as harmless, suddenly took on a chilling new meaning. Investigators learned that on the night Kada disappeared, her aunt reported hearing what sounded like her voice calling for help near the same school where her body was later found.
This the only way we could get in. This the only way we could get in. But we definitely can't get in because you hear that shit? Kada! Kada! That shit just made me cry.
Yes, my
Heart. You heard her scream, right? The she in here, like I said. I told you she the in here. You heard her scream. Y'all heard her scream, right?
Yes.
It sounded like she in the bottle.
Oh my God. Let me see if they heard it on the other side.
I heard a scream.
Because it made my whole heart stop.
Girl, that's why I've got tears coming out my eyes right now. Kada! She's screaming help. No, fuck that. I'm about to go find a lock. Bitch, this shit gotta get popped open.
But by the time anyone checked, there was no trace of her. That eerie detail still haunts the community. The thought that she might have been close enough for someone to hear, but too far for anyone to save her. Meanwhile, police pieced together more evidence from King's car. Not only did they find traces of Kada's blood, but also fragments of her hair and personal belongings, including a piece of jewelry believed to be hers. It became clear that she was killed in that vehicle before her body was moved. The brutality of it all left investigators shaken, but determined to get justice. When questioned again, King maintained his innocence, insisting he had no idea what happened to Kada, but his behavior after the disappearance told a different story. He deleted messages, switched phones, and was reportedly seen cleaning out his car just hours after she vanished. Friends said he seemed nervous and withdrawn, avoiding eye contact whenever her name was mentioned. Police later described his demeanor as cold and emotionless, even after learning Kada's body had been found. Then came another twist. Detectives discovered that after Kada's death, King made a phone call to one of her friends, Gabby. Reports say the conversation was short but strange, almost as if he was testing whether the news had spread. Gabby told investigators that King sounded uneasy and was asking if anyone had heard from Kada lately. She found it odd because by then, everyone was already searching for her.
And the Kada Scott situation. So if you are unaware, Kada Scott is a girl that went missing in Philadelphia on October 4th. So I did know Keon. He was my friend. I met him about 4 or 5 years ago, and he was also the local pharmacist. Now, me and my best friend, we were also mutual friends with Keon. He was our pharmacist. So one day Keon calls me, and keep in mind, I am in school, I am in Maryland, and he will usually just call me, just to check up and talk. So he calls me and he asks me if I know Kada. And I'm like, yeah, I know Kada. And he's like, oh yeah, I noticed that she lives really close to you. I'm like, yeah, she lived right in the back of me. And I'm not thinking nothing of it because he usually calls me and, we just be chatting. He'll call me about the people that be around because he is the pharmacist. I live in the neighborhood and he be in my neighborhood. So we hang up the phone and that was that. We were only on the phone for 29 seconds. So a couple of days after that, my best friend calls me and, we're just talking about life. And I mentioned to her how Keon brought up Kada to me. I'm not thinking nothing of it. I'm like, oh yeah, he was probably trying to flirt with her. He's probably trying to get at her. Mind you, me and my best friend, we know Kada because we grew up with her little sister. Now, we didn't know Kada personally because, again, we grew up with her little sister. We were around 12, 11 years old. Kada, she was much older than us, so we didn't really talk to her. So my best friend was like, oh yeah, he probably thought she was cute, and that was that. So a couple days, maybe a week after that, it is reported on October 4th that Kada is missing. So keep in mind, I am in Maryland, so I'm not really into all the Philadelphia news that be going on, so I'm not knowing that Kada is missing until my best friend sends me a text and says that Kada is missing. So I'm in my friend's dorm, and I call Keon, and it's a lot of music and a lot going on in the background, so I go somewhere that's quiet, and I tell him, Keon, Kada is missing, that girl, she's missing. So he was like, what? And then after that, the phone just hung up.
This call later became a key piece of evidence, showing that King was trying to control the narrative and distance himself from the crime. The autopsy report gave further insight into Kada's final moments. It confirmed she suffered a single gunshot wound to the head at close range, and there were signs that she may have been restrained before her death. Her DNA was found on materials inside King's car, and gunshot residue matched what was recovered from his vehicle. The report left no doubt. She had been killed deliberately. When these findings were released to the public, outrage swept through Philadelphia. Protests and rallies were held demanding accountability, with community members calling for tougher laws against stalking and harassment. People began speaking out about how many warning signs had been ignored, how many times Kada had reportedly voiced fear before it was too late. Her story became more than just a crime. It became a call for awareness and protection for women everywhere. As the evidence piled up, the case against Keon King became impossible to ignore. Detectives gathered surveillance footage from nearby streets, showing his black Honda passing Kada's workplace just minutes before she vanished. Cell tower records placed his phone at the same location, then later near the wooded area where her body was discovered. When investigators confronted him with this data, he refused to talk. He asked for a lawyer and sat in silence while officers laid out every piece of evidence connecting him to Kada's death. Soon after, he was arrested and charged with murder, kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, and multiple firearm violations.
As of last night, our office approved charges, as the DA just said, of arson, causing catastrophe, conspiracy, unauthorized use of an automobile, tampering with evidence, recklessly endangering another person, and receipt of stolen property. Those charges are in reference to the burning of a vehicle. That vehicle is a 2008 black Hyundai Accent.
The relief that swept through Kada's family was mixed with heartbreak. Justice finally felt closer, but it could never bring her back. Her mother said she still found herself reaching for phone, expecting to hear her daughter's voice, only to remember she never would. Then came the revelation that left many stunned. King, it turned out, had already been out on bail for a similar offense, a $200,000 release tied to a previous assault and kidnapping case that was later dismissed when witnesses didn't appear. That case has now been reopened, and prosecutors are linking it directly to the chilling pattern that led to Kada's death. He's also facing millions in fines and new restrictions, while investigators dig deeper into whether he had helped that night or try to destroy evidence afterward. Police say no second suspect has been confirmed, but the search for accomplices and missing pieces of the timeline continues. Was this truly the act of one man consumed by jealousy and rage, or is someone else still out there, holding a secret? For Kada's family, every hearing and every delay only reopens the wounds. They watch, waiting for the justice system to move forward, hoping this time the truth won't be buried under legal technicalities. The Philadelphia District Attorney's Office has vowed to pursue the case to its fullest extent, and many believe that this time, King won't walk free. But as we all know, justice can move painfully slow. And until that final verdict is reached, this story remains unfinished. So stay tuned, because we'll be following every court update, every motion, and every twist that unfolds in this heartbreaking case. This was the story of Kada Scott, a young woman whose life was taken far too soon, and whose memory continues to demand answers. Here on The Silent Witness, we make sure those voices are never forgotten. If you believe every victim deserves justice and every story deserves to be told, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter in this case is just beginning. And trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next.